Hey, it's Steve. Welcome back to Clear Direct. I have a week and a half until this airplane goes into paint, and I have still a lot left to do. If you saw my last video, you probably were laughing because if you're an experienced builder, you know I had a lot more than what I thought I had when I recorded that video. I pulled the plane out and did an update a couple days ago, but it was windy, so I'm going to go ahead and just re-record this video and give you guys an update on all that I've done in the last week and a half and what I've got left to do in the next week and a half. So let's get right into it. As always, there is a long form version of this video and a short form. The long form will include a lot more detail on the belly fairings, the tail fairings, etc. So a lot more detail in there as always. Okay, let's get right into it. You can see we have a cowling. We've got a nice fitting cowling. In fact, it's fitting up a little too nice. And what I mean by that is my painter requires a 1/16 of an inch gap everywhere on the cowling, as well as on the aft side of the cowling. So he lent me this really cool tool. I'm not sure what we call it, but it's precisely a 1/16 of an inch thick. And essentially you just put it in the joggle and start sanding, and it's gonna leave the required gap. So I've got that left to do. Clearly I've got the spinner left to do. So I've got to put on the propeller, trim this out to be correct size, leave the correct size gap, and then install all the hardware. So there's nut plates that go around the edge of it. Dimple it so that it's clocked and indexed. And so I always put it back in the same direction, and that should be done. Trim up this and the aft edge. Oh, and then the engine heat exit or airflow exit right there. I was unsure about the dimensions. So there's a figure in the figures manual that says 11.5 inches forward of the aft side of the cowling. Well, I didn't know if that was forward of it before it was trimmed, because there was like 3 more inches back here. So I just went conservative and cut less and asked the question. And they got back to me with a really good answer. They said, hey, it's pretty much forward of the cowling. And if you need another measurement to back that up, measure 9 inches aft of the intake. And so that's going to put it right at about here. So there's clearly a lot more trimming I need to do to get that right sized. I've done a lot of talking about how I do not want cooling problems. So I'm going to make that large and in charge. Before we get into the belly fairings right there, let's stick with the cowling and check out this bad boy. So thanks so much to my friend Terry. He's an RV builder, you can tell, because he loves squeezing solid rivets. But it turned out so good. So I designed this door on Adobe Illustrator, sent it into Send, Cut, Send, and they produced it for me. I had a bunch extra made just in case. I bought this surplus latch from Aircraft Spruce, and I bought this no-show hinge. It's a lot more sturdy than the one supplied with the kit. And we got that all fitting great. So Terry is such a craftsman. He noticed that the hinge itself wasn't manufactured exactly perfectly, and it left a little bit of a gap up here. So he shimmed it and got it fitting awesome. And we got it trimmed, so there is a 1/16 gap before we riveted that. So that is done, and I'm really, really happy with that. Once this is all trimmed, then I'm gonna drill these holes out bigger and put in the quarter turn hardware. Let's get into the gear fairings. A lot more, as I mentioned, on the long form video. If this is the long form video you're watching, it'll be at the end of this little update. These are fitting great, and I'm really happy with how they are now, but you can see something that shouldn't necessarily belong. That wasn't a mistake. This could have gone inside, but fabrication and installing of it just made it easier to put it on the outside. Let me talk about what that is. There's one over there. There's also one back here. This one was concerning to me. A friend of mine who owns an experimental Rans S21 like mine, but the factory built it, he had cracking in this area. Why? Because there's a rivet nut where each of these screws go into. And this one seems fine to me because there's structure nearby it. There's structure right nearby this one too. Structure nearby this one. There's no structure nearby this. So this is just, I believe, 20,000. It may be 25,000, but I think it's 20,000 6061 T6 aluminum. And it's pretty floppy if you don't put a doubler. And so he had cracking, so he had to fix that. So in order to avoid that problem, I put in just a little doubler, as well as I predicted this one to be a little bit weaker as well, so I made one for there. Okay, but got them fitting really, really nicely. And again, this is on the bottom of the plane. It'll be painted in a dark color. I wanted dark on the bottom of the plane just because of grease. and oil. If it's white, it's going to show that a lot more readily. Okay, moving to the wing strut or lift strut fairings. Those are fitting really, really nicely. I cut this gap right here so that I could put it on and take it off without removing the wing strut. But it's a little unnerving taking it off and putting it on. So I don't know if I'm gonna, cut out a little bit more, just because you have to really bend it in an awkward way to fit it over the lift strut and slide it up. But once again, there are rivet nuts securing each of these. I did not put in doublers for any of these. They're pretty well secured by structure nearby. You have to really avoid hitting the ribs. The only one that could be potentially an issue is right here. So I'll just keep an eye on that and keep it inspected. Moving our way aft, here is the aft window. I've got this all final riveted in now, and I have a bead of silicone around it. So hopefully, in theory, it's waterproof. And I just left the masking on for the painter. So this is going to be IFR certified. IFR certification is good for 2 years, but if you have water in your static line, you need to drain it and break open the static lines. My understanding is that decertifies your IFR cert. And I plan on draining water, making sure there's no water on it, on every condition inspection that's annually. So I'm sourcing a drain to actually drain that without breaking the continuity of the IFR system. Okay, so more on that. You've seen the tail dragger handle. You've seen the Aerosport products, carbon fiber fairing. The nut plates are in there. The hardware is just there. It's just sitting there for right now. This tail is actually only just clecoed in, but it's important to get it in to do a couple of things. Mainly the horizontal, and let's start with the horizontal. Okay, first off, you'll notice the inspection plates are on top of the horizontal. And that's just because of the incidence adjusters and the mounting bolts are on top. And actually, it's really nice for ease of maintenance and install. But you can see let's start with the fairing. Okay, so this fairing, you have to kind of self-mold it, not mold it, but bend it. And that's pretty easy. Edmund Gill from Rands has some videos on how to do that, so I won't repeat that. The only issue here is that I don't know if I messed this up or the Rands instructions are incorrect, in that this should be a flush rivet. Okay, I can't just drill it out now and countersink into the spar and dimple the skin. That's staying a domed pulled rivet. So clearly I just drilled out part of the fairing and now it's sitting nice and flush. Same thing on the other side. But if you're building a horizontal stab, heads up, take a look at where this is, right? So the rib outside from the middle to in, that should probably be a flush rivet. The incidence is adjusted, okay? So I have a Titan motor, so essentially all the way down, give it the most up authority that you can with a heavy engine. Okay, so the tail cone. We've got the tail cone here, much more on this tail cone in the long form edition, but yeah, nothing really to note here. Oh, yeah, the angle, that's important. So installing the elevator just to get that angle was a bit daunting, and I didn't do it. So I'll save it for the long form. I explain how I figured out the angle. Okay, the top fairing. This, you definitely do want to put the rudder in to get the spacing correct right here. I found that when I was initially fitting it up and not sure if I needed to do the rudder, and then once I put the rudder in, I was glad I did because it was a little bit angled. It wasn't going to contact it, but Rands recommends 0.375, I believe, of an inch. I'm just inside of that. So it'll be a nice tight fit right here. And nothing too much else to note on this, other than it does get riveted in. And so I'm not riveting it in until, look at this, camera mounts before rivet. Camera mounts. Thank you so much to FlightFlix for sponsoring this episode and sponsoring me and giving me a bunch of mounts. So I have the freedom and flexibility to install these wherever I want to put not just GoPros, but also poles for 360 cam. So I have an idea of putting a pole forward and having a 360 cam up there and having a really cool, unique angle that I really haven't seen a lot on YouTube or Instagram. So the idea is to either use this one or a smaller one. This is pretty hefty. It's aluminum, so it's not too heavy. But put a couple nut plates in there so that I can take it off in day to day, but have provisions to easily mount my cameras, whether it be a GoPro or a pole for 360 cam there, as well as on the wingtips. Okay, once I get that riveted in, then on to, again, fitting up the cowling and the windscreen. So doors also, and then there's 3 more interior closeouts. So on station 3, this is station 3. So station 4 closeout's the big plastic piece right there. Station 3 closeout is right here, right over there, to cover up the pulleys and pitot lines and electrical lines, flap lines, etc. And then 1 aluminum piece up here with the words experimental. I ordered an experimental sticker from Aircraft Spruce like 3 months ago, and they're still out of stock on that. But I digress. Okay, that is the update. If this is the long form video, I'm gonna play a lot more data. And if it's a short form video, thanks for watching. Until next time, Steve, you're clear to direct.